One, two, three, four. We have today the card, the Emperor, card number 4 in the major Arcana of Tarot. And for this one, I did a little bit of sitting and reading and piecings together of certain components of this particular card. Common symbolism will display, generally, more often than not, a masculine figure, which we see quite clearly seated here within the image, and makes sense. It's the Emperor. This developed in traditional senses from Italian portraiture art that then travelled to France with paper and printing, which is where a lot of the more traditional tarot deck iconography symbolism comes from. I was reading up about interesting history of different planetary associations with the Emperor and its evolution. At times it has been associated with Jupiter, the benevolence, still sometimes echoed in the posture and symbolism exaggerated within the leg positions, which is reminiscent of Saturn symbology. But it also passed through Venus at a certain point, and then more traditionally you will see it now associated with Aries, and that's where we get aspects of the ram symbolism. You'll also note down the corner lamb symbolism. I think there's very subtle references in this beautiful, beautiful card from Shadowscapes Tarot of some rams there. Interestingly enough, in particular in the Thoth deck, we have the kind of power aspect through Mars, through Aries, which is oftentimes associated with, power, will, directness, sometimes violence, sometimes war. But we also have the same symbol, the lamb, which is the same animal, but in a meekness. It's two sides. There's aspects of positive, there's aspects of negative, there's forces that that exist. Not in and of themselves are they good or bad, it's more their application as they come through us and how we utilize and work with them. One particular thing, you'll see also a little bit of repeated symbolism here of the Ankh symbolism here, beautifully illustrated and very, very gently hanging off one of the horns of the Emperor. You will see also an Ankh, symbol of life force, a symbol actually of balance as well, balance of masculine and feminine, which is why, even though traditionally this card can be seen as quite a masculine force, it's also again about balance, and that was one aspect of the High Priestess I didn't necessarily talk about enough, I felt. But anyway, we can't cover everything, but that is the two, is these poles. And tarot is a progression, so to look at anything in isolate, you'll only get so much understanding. Everything connects to everything else, and I'd like to also point out the beautiful symbolism we're seeing again, which is show it in one card I have to hand here. Is the High Priestess. We have a generally erect figure-like being in the middle in some form of circle above. So that's 1 and 0. Kind of basic symbolism. We see it echoed here again. We saw it in this particular alchemical visions with the other cards as well, with the magician, with the Empress as well. And I really, really do like that within the Shadowscapes deck we have more of a androgynous type being, because we can get caught up on what is what. One is one, not an isolate without an understanding of other, and that's very, very somewhat important. And the Alchemical Tarot book and deck, which is these oversized cards, talk very much about the anima and the animus, which is Jung's approach and understanding of the masculine and feminine forces within each being, every being, and how they interplay, or their relatedness and their importance. So, back to the Emperor as such, and the number, the numerology is 4. Now, one thing I really, really do like about the art, and I've left a card on the edge here that I will now hopefully put into some light. There we go. We've got a couple now. And you'll see this beautiful mirroring between them. You'll see the same symbolism. The white has now turned into red on the shield. It's changed positions of sides. The swan is now a lamb. You'll also note this symbol here and this symbol here. Very, very similar. Pretty much the same. So basically, to follow on from the Empress, we had a kind of rulership through beauty, and I alluded to correlations then to the Emperor, which is very much rulership in structure. And order is creating order out of the beauty or out of the chaos, and symbolisms of leadership in a sense, rulership, presiding over, being an authority. And more often than not, this symbolism we have with the crown, the Emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, this is where it sort of comes from, but through various people who were rulers of a particular province in Italy, were the first beings, usually men, portrayed as the emperor or an emperor. One thing to be mindful of within this particular card is if one is going to preside over some things, is going to act as an authority over interests that have a lot to deal with other people, structures in this world, effects that then are going to be felt among the many. One has to discern and decide, well, what is noble, what is just, what is right action. If you're in that position and you fail within those roles, then your legitimacy within that position as a ruler or as a rule maker or as a structural engineer of the world we live in, which is quite often what the Emperor and 4 can be about, law, governance, rulership. Your legitimacy would have to come into question if you fail at providing the circumstances and the system and the architecture, the real world architecture, to serve the people you are there to represent their interests. And it is quite it's quite an ask, and I think in today's situations it's almost laughable who is at times put up as people in these positions. How do they get there? And are they worthy of our attention, of our respect? Are they actually worthy of are following their dictates, if they are not just, if they are not fair. And anybody within a position, it's on them to govern well, but at the same time, as a person not in that role, it's also on individuals to question, are you blindly following things for the sake of following them? And if they're unjust and unfair and harmful and damaging, well, there's personal responsibility on each individual to discern those things. So again, we have this somewhat beautifully illustrated within. You can be the meek lamb, the sheep, if you so choose, and follow the rule, as it is said, or you can actually say, guess what? Nah. I can stand in my own power. I can be my own light, my own governor of rulership, of authenticity. And so we can look at dynamics of tarot cards with beings around us, with situations around us, or we could look at them through self. And I generally find the often better way of understanding is through self. Most esoteric and occult circles agree upon this and have this as some fundamental principle: know thyself. And on that particular note, I had a flick through one of my books the other day and read something relatively interesting. Lovely book here. Fantastic author, some really interesting ideas. So here we go. Lovely picture there. Death and sensuality. Eroticism. So basically sex and death. The two big taboos, the two concepts that so much is written about in strange and bizarre ways in the taboos. Some really fascinating things. This was chapter 8, from religious sacrifice to eroticism. So, just concepts of Christianity, the sacred nature of transgression, misunderstood. Won't go too deep into that because there was only really a passage just opened randomly last night. The main difficulty, let's read quote now, is that Christianity finds law breaking repugnant in general. True, the Gospels encourage the breaking of laws adhered to by the letter when their spirit is absent. But then the law is broken because its validity is questioned, not in spite of its validity. So even in the Gospel, Jesus flips the table, says, no, this ain't happening. Because beings are being exploited, beings are being ripped off, beings are being taken advantage of, and the law is unjust. So it's not breaking law for the sake of breaking law. It's it's breaking law because it's not valid. It isn't of a validity. And I think potentially, maybe going down a tangent of promoting law breaking. That could be interpreted that way, but would you follow a law if it was asking you to directly damage someone else? I mean, the transgression within that particular chapter I read was the killing of Jesus, the killing of another man. It's an order, I'm following orders. Well, is that a valid order? Is that a valid rule? Is that a valid law? And I think more and more as beings are enlightening themselves to the structures of the world we inhabit and live in, the more potential is for questioning the validity of laws and structures and whose interests they are actually serving. Because if they're not serving a wider, greater good, then, like they're not valid. Some may try and claim divinity and rulership, and there are aspects of that. I mean, within this particular card, the symbol here is of the sphere and the cross above it. again, a cross of 4 points representative of so many things. The sun, even the swastika, the cross, ancient symbols. The sphere potentially at times representing the world, and so many emperors would be portrayed, religious figures portrayed holding this. I forget its Latin term now, but it was meant to symbolize authority of rule, God's authority of rule, and especially in Christendom. But if a being hides behind that without accountability to the population of self, then it's pointless. It's a cover screen. It's a smoke screen. It doesn't serve anymore. And we need to be wary of these things. We need to be wary about how we wield our own power and our spiritual power, because oftentimes you will see emperor symbolism is portrayed in this red: fieriness, fire, passion, spiritual power. And are we doing it for what particular aims, ambitions? Another great, wonderful book I recommend everybody who has an interest in aspects or things like this to read is The Golden Bough, which references the King of the Woods, ancient pagan Italian traditions of the King of the Woods was the authority, the person to consult on whatever matters there be. And they held their position, and the interesting thing about that position and apparently the rituals around this was that if somebody was aggrieved by their position, not happy with it, they were free to challenge the particular king. And that would be a battle to the death. So either the challenger overcomes the emperor and will replace him, or they will die in the process. And it's an interesting concept. I mean, are you prepared to put your life on the line for your beliefs, for what you believe is right? And in older systems, beings did, and older cultures, that was the way it be. We don't have this anymore. We have political systems whereby, and even monarchies and other rulership structures whereby what's at stake? Where's the skin in the game? There's the skin in the game of leaders. Help your mates out, fill your pockets, fill the coffers of yourself, do a little bit of lip service, play the game, and then basically disappear into your nice life you created for yourself. It's a form of usury. It's basically another system of profiteering off others. And it's not to say totally that all politicians and rulers and leaders are like this, but I would hazard a guess, the structures being as they are, it's really hard for beings not to fall down that particular trap. And it's on them. It's actually on them to figure out those sorts of things. And it's also on individuals to perhaps highlight and elucidate aspects of what is correct governorship, what is correct leadership, rulership over others. Because, and I say that and I'll retract that actually, because if you can't practice that over yourself, how can you expect others to follow a dictate? It's a form of hypocrisy. It's a form of do what I say, don't do what I do. Right? And to be a leader or an emperor, you basically have to have a will, a drive, a desire, a passion, but you also need to understand what is right, what is just, and what is noble. And a kind of component, I think, worthy of reflecting about within that is tarot as a progression and a journey. If you've skipped steps along the way, if you've decided to try and jump to something before you're ready, before you've understood, it's not going to be that effective. It's not going to last. It's not going to be of great benefit. And the Emperor is actually about the congealing of things learned, formulating it into structure to create good things to benefit others. That is essentially what the Emperor, in my understanding, should represent. And hopefully we're going to understand this more so as we decide what kind of futures, what kind of systems we wish to inhabit, and share with others and participate in. And the world's at a really interesting time whereby it's so obvious the systems we have subscribed to and bought into are ridiculous, are failing, are not living up to promises, lip service promises that were said. It's a con job, and yeah, so there is that. And I won't spend too much longer here, but I will leave these two because the mirroring is just absolutely exquisite within this. You'll also notice like the leg position is wonderful. It actually makes the number of the 4. And there's so much implication and things leading to other things. It's like you'll see the fleur-de-lis of the 3 in this card. You'll see aspects of 2 where we've come from, duality aspects into the 3, into a 4, within the cards as they lead to other cards, and I really love that. And you see it in architecture as well, or I see it in architecture. So of some of these really old, beautiful buildings, we have lovely 4 symbolism. We still have the 3 within the, always the fleur-de-lis 3 down there, but we also have the 5 with the B, which is another symbol from, I believe, French about authority and rulership. So to say, there is this beautiful saying, behind every great man there's a wonderful woman, and so there is. Or it could be vice versa. Behind every great woman there's a great man, anonymous, these interplays. However we see them, which is why I really like this particular one. Is neither too much one nor the other. And again, this lovely symbolism of circle and line, which if you think about the English language of all the letters, basically that's what we work with. We worked with a curve and a straight line, and from that we have so much. Language is magic. Last one, just quickly, is from the alchemical garden. The alchemist garden, I should say, and the emperor portrayed here is San Pedro. No shortage of awareness of this mescaline, its sacredness in culture, and it's interesting. A lot of the masculine associated plants within Native Americas, or ancient American cultures of older tribes, are associated strangely with silence and introspection. Knowing how to go within to discern truth. And this is what plant medicine does a lot of the time. Helps us go within to understand truth, to explore self. And I really, really love the beautiful illustration. If you've seen San Pedro's flowering, they are quite exquisite and potent. You can smell the glory, the glory of beauty, the potency within that. So a very phallic symbol, but then again, there's a blossoming from fertility, from phallus. It isn't fallacy. It isn't, destroy the patriarchy. There's a power in the masculine within all of us that can drive us to achieve, to bring to fruition, to be fertile, to create things of stability and wonderment and joy, for not just self, but for others around us as well. And I think that's a really important concept of the Emperor. And I think that is mostly that. And I'll leave it at that. And yeah, go enjoy the fantastic sunshine of today. Cheers.